It's the Happy Families podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
Hello, this is Dr. Justin Coulson. Welcome to the Happy Families podcast. We're so glad to have you here. I'm here with Kylie, my wife and mum to our 6 daughters. Kylie, normally on a Monday, we don't do this, but we received an email to podcasts@happyfamilies.com.au. We prefer voice messages from happyfamilies.com.au. On the podcast's link, you just press the button and talk to us. That's what we prefer. But this was such a good question that even though it came via email, we decided we were going to answer it today anyway. Tomorrow, normal questions as per usual. But today, a question from somebody who is really struggling, and I thought it would be good to have you involved in the conversation as well. Why don't you let us...
Is that because I actually thought you had written this question?
No. This comes from someone called Corinne. It was Corinne who asked the question, not me.
Corinne said, we're currently facing difficulties with our 10-year-old daughter.
Now I know why you thought that I wrote that.
She's exhibiting a strong sense of stubbornness, particularly when it comes to setting boundaries. Instead of engaging in discussions about why we've established certain limits, she reacts with screaming and outright refusal to listen. Even when we attempt to discuss the matter calmly, she becomes defensive and refuses to communicate. We're open to hearing her perspective and providing her with autonomy, but she seems unwilling to engage in dialogue. Despite our efforts to address the issue at a more suitable time, she persists in avoiding the conversation altogether. She often responds with, I just want to be left alone. We're trying to build connection to enable these conversations, but she just doesn't want to connect. We're seeking guidance on how to effectively communicate with her and navigate these challenging moments.
Okay, so what do you do when the 3 E's don't work? Kylie, for those who are not familiar with the 3 E's of effective discipline, this is a model that I developed about 10 years ago now, maybe more, based on the work that's been done in self-determination theory, where we're trying to support children's basic psychological needs. And the way we do that, of course, is by helping them to feel like there is a positive relationship between the two of us. There's connection. By helping them to identify how they can be competent, by giving them a reasonable structure for how to move forward, and by supporting their autonomy. That is, by giving them the opportunity to develop solutions that are in harmony with their values. And this is the critical thing. A lot of people think that autonomy means giving the kids free rein, but autonomy means that I'm acting volitionally. I know what I value. I know what's important. I'm acting in that direction. We've got kids who, from time to time, have made it very clear that they don't want to engage in a 3 E's conversation. They don't want us to explore their world, explain what we expect, and empower them to find solutions. That's what the 3 E model is, because it supports those basic psychological needs. Before we dive into any of the answers that I've started to put together for this podcast, what's your typical response when the kids don't want to dive into a 3 E's conversation with us?
Over the years, I have discovered that time is a really important friend with these conversations. Allowing our kids the space that they need to kind of just have some time away is important, but it's also important for me as well. I get really, really caught up in wanting to fix things in the moment without recognizing that sometimes things don't get fixed in the moment.
Right. And the whole thing there really, this is pretty much where I was going to go anyway, and I'm so glad that you've said it. Fundamentally, the reason that we need to give enough time and not always fix things in the here and now, right here, we've got to talk about it, we've got to sort it out, we need to know where we're going from this point on. The reason is that equation that I developed a number of years ago as well, which is that high emotions equals low intelligence. That is, the more emotional you are, the more stupid you are. And that's what happens with our kids, and it happens with us. The more emotional we get, the less able we are to have a reasonable conversation and find solutions. And ultimately, what we're trying to do is, that's what discipline is, right? Discipline ultimately is helping the kids to find appropriate solutions so that we don't keep on having these challenges and these difficulties.
So I guess as an add-on to that, the acknowledgement is that sometimes time is a few minutes, sometimes it's a few hours, sometimes it's a few days, and sometimes it's a few weeks.
Yeah, you've kind of skipped to the very bottom of...
Oh, have I?
Yeah, like of all the things that I've got. So here's my wrap-up. Let's go straight to the end, and then we'll sort of fill in the middle.
I'm sorry, honey.
The 3 things I was going to say. Number 1, you don't have to do the 3 E's all the time. Like sometimes it's okay to step in as a parent and say, I'd love to explore and explain and empower, but this is just what we need to do. And as the parent, I'm going to be the prefrontal cortex and I'm just going to make this stuff happen. Okay. We don't want to do that very often, but from time to time as a parent, you just do have to be the mean, cranky parent that gets stuff done.
But I don't even think it's about being mean and kind of being forceful in the conversation.
Yeah, I use the wrong words. It's really about holding a boundary. Sometimes as a parent, you just have to say, I know you're sad. I know you don't want to do this, but this needs to be done.
Some conversations are just hard.
Right.
They're hard. They're hard as an adult, let alone being a child.
Yeah.
And the acknowledgement for me as a mum is, I know you don't want to have this conversation, but when we're part of a family, sometimes we have to do these hard things. And I love how our family feels when we do X, Y, and Z. But right now, it doesn't feel great. Can you think about why it doesn't feel great and how we might work together to make it feel great again?
Okay. And again, if you've got really high emotions, that's probably not going to work well because the kids are not going to play the game. They're not going to get involved in it. But so long as emotions are lower, you can definitely do that. I guess my point really, though, is you don't have to always do the 3 E's. If you did, you would be exhausted and so would they. The second point, though, is you can do the 3 E's in 30 seconds. It doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out session. So long as emotions are cool, you can say, all right, I know that you don't want to clean up the house. I know that it just feels like it's so burdensome. Is there anything else? Like, is there any other reason that you just don't want to be participating and helping right now? And they say, because I want to play games. You go, I get it. Everyone wants to play games. That's fair enough. We need to work together. Now you've gone from explore to explain. We need to work together. What do you think we can do to make this happen in a way that we can all feel good about it? Like you can get that done in 30 seconds, in 20 seconds. It just takes practice. And this is the big thing with the 3 E's or any other parenting model. Everything takes practice compared to yelling, time out, smacking and doing the old school style of parenting.
Yeah, so with our 10-year-old, one of the conversation pieces I have with her is I want you to be able to do that too. We've just got to get this done. So how can we work together to get this done quickly so you can get back to that?
And so long as she's not emotional, we get good responses. If she is emotional, it takes 4 hours.
Yes.
and I think that's the reality, right? Like you've said this already, but as I said, the very last point that I was going to make in this podcast, and we're making it sort of halfway through, is sometimes it will take weeks or more to get a resolution because emotions can be really big. And while the process is not flawed, our practice is, and our brains are, and our emotions are, and our children are, and we are. Therefore, I remember one of the big blow-ups that we had in our home with our firstborn when she was only about 13, 14, revolved around her dishonesty with technology use. And she lost her access to devices for a little while until we were able to resolve the issue. She was so emotional every time we talked about it. And I would say, we can't have the conversation when you're emotional. Let's try again tomorrow. And I reckon it took 3 months. Maybe it wasn't that long. Maybe it was 6 weeks. But whatever it was, it took a long time before she was finally able to regulate her emotions enough to have a conversation sensibly where we could come up with a solution that we could feel good about. I think this is the critical thing. Like our kids need time to digest it. They need time to work out what they value, especially if you're dealing with neurodivergent kids, right? Like if neurodiversity is in your home, then new concepts and new ideas can take a long time to digest. There's a lot of rigidity. There's a lot of certainty. There's a lot of my way or no way going on.
Black and white.
Absolutely. And so we've just got to be willing to sit in that uncomfortable space and wait for the kids to work through this, to figure this stuff out.
There were a couple of other things you did want to talk about, but I stole your thunder and we kind of started from the end to the beginning again. So let's have a chat about them. I think one of the most important things that I have learnt with our 10-year-old specifically is information overload. I have conversations with her and I think it's really clear and, pretty concise, the things that I want her to understand. And she has gotten so good at articulating, and she will say in those moments, Mum, you're talking too much. Like literally those are her words. Mum, you're talking too much. I can't take it all in. And at that point she's pretty intensely overloaded. But I really appreciate that she's able to say it, because when she says it, I go, oh, take a step back. Okay. Let's go back to the beginning, or let's just leave things for a little while. You need some time to regulate. I need some time to give you a hug, whatever it takes, so that we don't have that emotional overload.
So the short version of what you just said is be really clear in your own mind about what you want to communicate and then get in and out as fast as you can. Felt like it took you
Less is more.
It felt like it took
Less is
about
more.
3 minutes for you to say, don't give too much information. A couple of other things. Be okay with your kids being uncomfortable and be okay with being a bit uncomfortable yourself. Sometimes as a parent, you just do have to hold that ground until your child gets the point. Kids need limits, boundaries, structure, frameworks, systems to follow so that they can feel competent and safe. And if they're pushing against that, it's normal. That's what they do. Be okay with their discomfort. You don't have to fix their emotions. Early in our relationship, or not too early, sort of a dozen years ago or something, I remember saying to you, I'm not going to be upset just because you are. And that I could have said it nicer. I didn't say it the best way possible. I kind of blew it that way. But what I was essentially saying is I'm not responsible for whether you feel lousy or not. So, because I wasn't in that case. It's not like I'd done something. You were just having a blue sort of week. Therefore, I'm not going to feel bad because you're feeling bad. I'm going to be supportive and loving and caring and empathic. And I want you to feel good. But if you're having a bad day, I'm not going to let that ruin mine.
So I'm going to kind of just twist your words a little bit there,
Okay.
because the one thing that I really feel so important, and it's something that was not modeled to me as a child, but the acknowledgement that when our children are in those hard spaces and there is a misalignment in values as we kind of navigate this challenge, whatever it happens to be, the most important thing we can do is turn towards our children.
Yeah.
So
I made that sound like it wasn't very validating.
Yeah. Your acknowledgement was, I'm not going to let your upset or your uncomfortability in whatever emotion you're dealing with change the way I interact with you. And that's exactly what it was. It was, I'm not going to let your sad, your whatever, your heaviness infiltrate the way I feel about me specifically, and therefore it allows me to love you the way I do all the time.
You said that so much better than me. Yeah. The whole idea was, I love you like crazy. I'm so sorry that you're going through this, and I'm absolutely here for you. But once I leave the room, I'm going to go and get on with my stuff my way because I can't be weighed down by it.
Yeah. And we talk about emotions being contagious.
Right.
And it's so easy for us to catch our children's emotions and vice versa. And when our kids are in this difficult place, often our knee-jerk reaction is to meet their emotions with more intensity.
Yeah.
But what they actually need to know is that no matter what's going on, no matter how many times we have to sit down and have this hard conversation, no matter how many times we sit down and we don't get to the end of the conversation, I'm going to love you and I'm going to keep loving you.
Yeah. Love that. Let's wrap this up. I think it's fairly common with not just oppositional kids, but kids in general. Their instinct is to go with what they know, to reject anything that we're saying, especially if it's new information. And they have to really feel like it is their choice to get on board with the new idea or not. So if you're not getting anywhere at all with the 3 E's, it's probably because your child is still feeling coerced or still feeling emotional. And so trying to argue the pros and cons and trying to have a really logical engagement with them is just not going to work. We need to make gentle suggestions. We need to listen and then back away and give them time to digest. These conversations usually don't have to be fully resolved in the moment, on the spot. We really hope that that's been helpful, Corinne. Thanks so much for your question. More answers to more questions tomorrow on the Happy Families podcast, which is produced by Justin Rulon from Bridge Media. Craig Bruce is our executive producer. If you'd like more info about making your family happier, visit us at happyfamilies.com.au.